just saying that. I literally think someone told me that one time. That guy was like formerly and not like a prison chef, like he came from prison and then he got a job as a cook.
He was a really good cook.
He made one heck of an omelet. I'll tell you that. Man. By the way, I did click the live button like a couple seconds ago.
Yeah, I noticed
Figured
that.
figured, why not, right? I mean, it's like 4 seconds early. You know what I didn't do though
Isn't
is
it like
tweet out.
5 minutes early?
Well, actually, four in that instance for some reason in my mind translated to minutes. I don't know why. I've been doing that in a meeting the other day. I saw something that happened on the 28th of December, and because sometimes February has 28 days, I said that it happened on the 28th of February, and everyone was like, wait, February hasn't even happened yet.
You're
Doesn't
like,
February
No,
always have 28 days?
nah, not some years. Some years it has 29. This year, in fact, I think, is a
Oh,
leap
I thought you
year.
were saying that it sometimes doesn't reach 28. And I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure
Oh,
it
oh no,
always
no, I
is
mean sometimes it
28.
has exactly 28.
February is a tricky month, it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, cool. I got that link tweeted, which is a good thing because we are live right now for episode 35 of the World Map Podcast. Pretty exciting because this is our Game of the Year episode here. We're 10 days into 2016, so I figure at this point we've played as much as we're going to play as 2015's games before it gets so far out that it doesn't matter anymore. But this is going to be a big episode 35, and we've got all our normal segments as well.
Right.
I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and joining me as usual is one of your other hosts, Clark.
That's me.
Hello, good sir. How are you today? I hear you just had a large bowl of pasta.
I did have a large bowl of pasta. It was very large and very full of pasta.
Hmm. It's- I mean, you can't classify it any better than that, to be honest. And joining us also, your other host, back with the show, Nick.
Hello.
And what sorts of bowls of things have you been consuming lately, good sir?
I had a big bowl of Frankenberry cereal because Clark ate all of the Count Chocula last time he visited. What a jerk.
What do
Well,
you just like stock up on Halloween candy cereals?
Well,
I
I got
mean,
my
they're
blueberry
tasty treats.
saved up. It's waiting for me.
Wait, whoa. Now, did you have a big bowl of something? Because it seems a little unbalanced here. You're giving information on everything we're eating probably for some nefarious purpose. I just want a little.
No, I did not have a large bowl of anything. I went to Bob Evans this morning for breakfast, and then I had a bag of chips and and a pack of crackers for lunch.
And that's how we know you're from West Virginia.
Yes, indeed. Man, I'm gonna tell you about that Bob Evans breakfast. Actually their dinner too. Bob Evans is a very underrated restaurant because you go in there and the service is amazing because they have like nothing but clientele over the age of 70 who are like probably won't tip at all unless the service is perfect.
Mm.
And then like their food is actually like pretty good and they have more healthful options than you would think. Like they've evolved their menu the last 5-6 years. I'm a big proponent for the Bob Evans. And the greatest thing is like I hate going to restaurants when it's really noisy and like loud in there and you can't have a conversation and whatnot. You don't ever have to worry about that at Bob Evans because most of the people are asleep, dying, or that's pretty much it because they're all over 70. But it's like my secret like go get some food place and where it's nice and quiet, but good food, good service.
I would imagine you hear lots of sirens with, all the ambulances coming to get people who are like having cardiac arrest and all that.
None of that today, but I don't know. The guy behind me, he definitely there was something wrong with his lung. But I guess we could go ahead and get right into this week's show. Before we get to the good stuff, let's do the pretty good stuff and talk about the backlog and what we've been playing this week. So, Nick, why don't you kick us off there? I know you've been playing a little bit of that nice game called Ark Survival Evolved.
I don't know if I'd call it nice. I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it functional. I was going to say functional, but it crashes a lot. It has a lot of little bugs that really break up the gameplay. The core base of the game I actually like. It's one of them. You're deserted here. You've got nothing. You got to go just find everything and build from scratch. Though you starve to death really fast. You almost starve to death before you actually figure out what's going on. So you'll die like 3 or 4 times just from starvation before you realize, oh, I got to go punch that tree and gather wood. And I'm not exaggerating there. That's how you gather wood at the beginning. You go to trees and you just beat the crap out of them with your fists. And you're like punching chunks of wood off the tree.
That's how I thought everyone did it.
So they definitely weren't going for realism here then.
Well, no. If you punch the tree long enough, you break your arms, and then you're screwed. So there's a little bit of realism there. Because I expect to break my arms if I punch a tree long enough. So they got that right. But it gets pretty cool when you get into it later on. I was actually playing over at a friend's house that had much more than my profile had, so I kind of cheated and jumped ahead a little bit onto theirs. And you could, once you actually get enough in the game, you could start taming dinosaurs and riding them around, which is oddly satisfying. Just get on the back of like some kind of. I'm bad with dinosaur names. I used to know them when I was a kid. Clark understands that dilemma there. Used to know them all.
Well, they changed half the names and put feathers on all of them at this point. So.
I don't know.
But it's an interesting game for a free game because it's free on Xbox Live. You can just go download it. I think it's in beta form still, actually. It's worth a try if you're into that kind of survival game, but expect the game to have its fair share of bugs. Sometimes it'll load, it'll be pitch black, and you'll think the game's broken, but after like 4 minutes of just patiently waiting, it's like, oh, there's the game. I couldn't tell if it was nighttime and I was just staring at a wall, because you could move, you could hear all the sounds of movement, and you could hear the nature. You just couldn't see anything. And when it gets night in the game, it actually gets pretty dark. So I don't know if I just waited long enough for it to start turning to morning, or if the game loaded. So,
so how would you compare this to like other games that are focused on survival, like Don't Starve and those types of games?
Well, I can't compare it to Don't Starve. It's very realistic. We mentioned that it wasn't realistic, but they put it in a realistic style, not that kind of Tim Burton cartoon look. It's a 3D type game. Kind of. Have any of you seen or heard of the game Rust?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, think of the game. Think of Rust in a way, and then add more elements to it, such as you're going to starve much quicker in this game. Stamina bars. Take it to another level of survival, but it's very similar to the game style of Rust. Except you don't have a lot of guns everywhere shooting everybody.
I didn't know that there was a level of annoying survival game beyond Rust.
I actually didn't mind Rust too much. It was simple enough that once you figured it out, you could start to get things. This game, it doesn't explain anything to you. At least I couldn't find a way for it to explain to me. The only reason I knew what to do in any way is because I played Rust. If I hadn't played a game like Rust, I would have been lost and probably turned the game off much quicker than having known what I should be doing. It's like, oh, okay, crafting set. I should probably build myself some kind of axe or start making a house or something. Though it is fun. You can build a club and start clubbing the crap out of dodo birds. They're all over the place. And so, there's some historical fact in that.
Hopefully we'll be able to ride some dinosaurs in Far Cry Primal pretty soon, and we won't even have to worry about taming those, probably. Just wrangle them up with a lasso or something.
Honestly, I'd rather ride some robot dinosaurs.
Horizon Zero Dawn might make that possible. And, yeah, excited about both of those games. Unfortunately, haven't been able to play them yet because they're not out, but I have played a couple of PlayStation Vita games this week, and people keep talking about how the Vita is dead, but I would challenge like anybody who thinks there aren't games for the Vita to go on Amazon and just try to count how many JRPGs and like other Japanese flavored games there are for the Vita. I think if you are one of those people who is super into like visual novel games or JRPGs,
or rhythm games,
like any of those Japanese flavored games that have been localized, Uh, you cannot. I don't think there's a platform. I don't know if there's ever been a platform that has as many of those games on it as the Vita. Like I just go like crawl through reviews and like learn about new Japanese games on the Vita on Amazon all the time, and then I'll go and look at wikis and like figure out which one I want to try next. And like I feel like my Vita is going to be alive forever, just trying out those types of games. So I got one recently called X-Blaze Lost Memories. If you're a fan of the BlazBlue fighting franchise, it's actually like some of the same characters. It takes place in that same universe. But the X-Blaze games are more the visual novel style where you actually do very little gameplay. It's really more you're watching an anime, and you're walking around gathering some things. You're not really even puzzle solving. You're really just like looking at a map and figuring out how to walk to the next thing you need to gather, which then triggers another scene from the story, which in this game is anywhere from a 5 to 20 minute long anime segment. It's crazy. And then as you do other things in the game and beat levels, you get additional crystals that you can go into a menu and select to watch, which show you backstory and perspectives of the story from other characters. I'm on like level 3 of this game. I think there are something like 8 levels of it, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's surprising to me because I don't really like the visual novel style of game all the time. I've talked about on the show how I've been like kind of burned out on the adventure games lately, and the whole like point and click and having to make conversation decisions and that sort of stuff, which is stuff that I found cool for a little while, but I felt like it got old really fast. I think where this is different is it's a good like sitting on the couch like second screen thing to do, or kind of like lying in bed to wind down at night. If you don't have an hour, 2 hours to jump into that big console title, it's a good like 30-minute fit in, watch a couple of scenes, and really like you're not playing much of the game, you're not having to make conversation decisions. It's really like watching a TV show, and so I think that's kind of why I'm enjoying it, because it's a good like distraction thing when I've been playing like a tough game on PC or the console for a couple hours and I just want to like chill, but I can do that while on my Vita and while doing a little bit of gameplay, and while earning trophies. So it's pretty cool. I think too, like part of the appeal of this, I know nothing about the Blaze universe. So part of the appeal for me though is the characters and like how cute they are and the art style. It switches between like a regular anime and then like the kind of chibi art style. It kind of switches back and forth, and it's all Japanese voice acted, so there's no like lame English voiceovers where like usually that is a bad thing when that happens. The voice acting is all the original voice acting, and it's just subtitled. So it's just I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and it's very not very expensive at all. So I would recommend that game. The other Vita game that I played this week is Nihil Umbra, which is one of the free PS Plus games for December. I don't think I would recommend this game. It's a adaptation of a 2012 iOS game, and I found it really annoying because you have to select different colors of paint and paint on the touchscreen to solve different puzzles. So for example, you need to like stick to a ceiling to avoid a certain type of enemy. So you would use the brown paint and then jump up and stick to the ceiling and wait for the enemy to walk by so you can get by them. There's red paint that sets certain enemies on fire. There's yellow paint that connects circuits and makes electricity to make platforms move. And the puzzles are, I would say, not that challenging. They're a little too easy. But also, like, the mechanic is annoying because you have to either tap the screen and select the color you want on the color wheel and then draw with your finger, all while doing the platforming actions with the thumbsticks and buttons.
Yeah, that's...
So it's kind of like you need a third hand to play this game.
Yeah, pick one or another kind of input method,
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is they actually made it so that the R button on the shoulder will change the color, so you can kind of cycle through the colors. So that would make it a lot more manageable because you don't have to do that initial tap to find a color you need. But they didn't put into that cycle the eraser option, and you often need to, so if you're on a platform that's moving because you've connected a circuit with the yellow color, you need to sometimes stop that platform by painting with the eraser over your yellow colors, and that's not in the cycle. You can't cycle through to the eraser and then get it, so you have to, like, while moving on a platform, reach up, find it in the color palette, reach over and paint it, then move your character with the thumbstick and jump all at the same time somehow. So it got very annoying. So I would not recommend that game. And then the last thing, and honestly the thing that I put the most time into yet again this week, was Rise of the Tomb Raider. And that game just keeps getting better. The more skills I unlock, the more areas that I discover, the more tombs that I raid. It's so much fun, and easily, I talked about last week how it's one of the probably the best looking game I have seen this generation, and it just keeps proving that to me again and again with each new environment that I get into. One thing I wanted to mention about it this week, though, was that there's this cool feature that I came across, and I didn't really know about it. I noticed when I would be in loading screens or on the start menu, I would see a leaderboard of my Xbox Live friends who have the game, and like how many points they had accumulated in each of the areas of the world map. I came into this like big battle sequence inside of sort of these ruins area that I was in outside of a mine, and it was a tough battle sequence. It was probably the first battle sequence in the game where I saw the black and white screen when you're like almost out of health and dead. But I survived it. I didn't die, and I won the battle. And then I noticed like a couple of backpacks lying over in the corner, and I walk over and I pick up these backpacks, and they're from my Xbox Live friends who died in that room, and I got like some of the stuff that was in their backpacks.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, so I felt like really good because I survived that battle, and right there was like proof that they died in that room when they got there. But it was just like a cool little touch, like, oh, somebody else has been here, but they didn't make it, and like I get their stuff now. And it wasn't anything that like impacts gameplay or like makes the game easier or anything like that. It was like basically credits to spend in like some of the other modes primarily, but still a really nice little touch in that game. It continues to just make me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
That's really cool. I know Zombie U had a similar kind of feature where sometimes you'd see the zombies of the other players in the game, and you can kind of just beat them in the head with a racket or something and take their backpack full of stuff. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that feed. That is a good way to do online multiplayer.
Not really just about any game, as long as you can, find backpacks full of stuff from other players.
Yeah. Or like in the Souls games where you can, the ghosts can come in, you can like leave messages for people and like try to trick people into traps and things like that. I
hate it when that happens. I always fall for the trap. It's like, oh, this is what you should not be doing. I better go the other way, and then it's bam, right into a trap.
Or they just mess with your head like in Bloodborne. They're like, watch out for so and so you're walking down these corridors like, where's he at? Where's he at? What was that guy talking about? So it just made you paranoid the whole time. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. I like those features. But.
Agreed. All right, well that's the backlog this week. Let's go ahead and call in the news motorcycle. So obviously the Consumer Electronics Show happening this past week, and a little bit of news coming out of that. It's more of an industry thing, less of a gamer thing, but there's some neat things that get shown there from time to time. Obviously, we'll talk about VR in a minute, but obviously that's huge thing there this year. One thing that I saw in a story from CES are these really cool, super awesome Me 3D printed action figures. Have you guys heard of or seen these things before?
Yeah, I heard of them a little bit. Actually, a couple months ago, I think back in November, they're basically that you can get like 3D printed, I guess, the 3D printout of your face put on the face of different action figures so that it's like an action figure of you or someone else. And
yeah, so I think you're right there in that these have been around for a little while now. I read that they're actually already in some Target stores. I'm not sure what locations those are in. There's certainly not any in the DC area, but essentially what they put inside the Target store is a kiosk, and it sounds like they're going to be putting more of these in more stores soon. And the kiosk has technology in it that will scan your face, like you said, slap it on an action figure from the franchise of your choice. At CES, they were talking about Star Wars, obviously, is the big franchise right now. So
they also have Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Iron Man was one that someone had done. I think they're about $60, but I kind of feel like if I could get my face 3D printed onto a Star Wars action figure, I would probably do it once and pay the $60. That's pretty cool.
Nice. What kind of a character would you be? A stormtrooper, a Jedi?
That's tough, man. That is so tough. I don't know. Maybe like get my face printed onto like a Yoda action figure, so it's got the ears, but then like my face.
Nice.
Pretty awesome. So we also this week heard that the writer of the Half-Life video games, and kids, ask your parents what Half-Life is. Mark Laidlaw has announced his retirement from Valve. So I don't know. What do you guys think this means? That Half-Life 3 is finally done, or that it's just never happening?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's going to happen at some point, probably in maybe another 10 years or so, when everybody finally stops talking about it.
I don't know. Like, are there people left who care about Half-Life? Like, I feel like there aren't that many people left who are still like on the bandwagon, like clamoring for Half-Life 3. I guess there are some super fans out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go to YouTube comments on Half-Life related videos, that would say otherwise, but I guess you can't judge based on YouTube comments.
I think it's going to go the way of Duke Nukem Forever. It's just going to kind of fall out of limelight and then just come out of nowhere and probably going to suck because some other company's going to pick it up and it's just going to release it. The little bit of diehard fans left are going to be like, this is great, and they're going to get it and then just like hate everything.
Yeah, of course there are the people out there who predict that Half-Life 3 will be a HTC Vive launch game since Valve's working on that.
But I don't know what it means if the writer is leaving because, well, first off, since we don't know anything about whether there even is going to be a Half-Life 3, we don't know if there already is a story written or something mapped out about that. And one of the things I really liked about the original Half-Life games, Half-Life 1 and 2, was the story. It's not just great gameplay, but it's also a great story, and so I don't know how that would be impacted by him leaving as well.
Yeah, I have a confession to make, and that is that I, for some reason, never liked Half-Life.
Yes, that's a confession you probably should not have made just now. Wait, did you play a console port? Because if so, I can understand.
I think I played. Was there an N64 version? Because that's what's coming.
There was a Dreamcast version. I know.
Maybe it was that one. I definitely did play it on console when I played it, and I was like, I was just not a fan. I don't know.
Yeah, the problem with the console is whenever you're going down a corridor somewhere, it has to load the next part, and so all of a sudden the game would just freeze, the enemies would be frozen there, you'd be frozen there, and then all of a sudden it'll finish loading, and then you're moving again. But it wasn't like that on PC. So.
What I would like instead of Half-Life 3, though, is a Star Wars game with a single-player experience, unlike Battlefront. And somebody tried to start a Kickstarter for an open-world Star Wars RPG, which I thought, I thought that we already had that. Like the Old Republic is an MMO, open world RPG kind of thing that's out there, like that you can go play, that they're releasing new content for, and that's not really my style either, the MMO genre, but this guy apparently thought we needed another open world RPG, I guess more of a traditional game.
It had to have been fake.
Well, I think it was not really a fake Kickstarter so much as this guy is weird. Because I checked this thing out when he opened it up, and it was this like bootleg together thing with like a Star Wars logo slapped on it and this like terrible grammar and not that much explanation. The Kickstarter was for $200,000. Like you can't make make cut the rope for $200,000.
First off, let's not knock his grammar. I mean, he was typing it on his cell phone, I heard.
Yeah, there's something about that in there too. But obviously, like, this guy doesn't have the license to Star Wars or anything. So I think at one point he like edited it to say Star Wars like open world RPG, which at that point, like, if it's not Star Wars, it loses the excitement, right? So, but then he finally like took it down after getting all this attention all over the internet and all these people kind of making fun of him, which I guess I am a little bit right now. But hey, kudos to this guy for trying to go out there and chase his dreams, which. His final message is, and I'm going to read this verbatim. I am taking this Kickstarter down myself. Disney has not contacted me to tell me to shut it down. For those of you who think you own Disney, I am taking this Kickstarter down because I very much respect Disney, and I do not want this to get too big. T-O big.
Spelled with T-O, by the way.
Here's where it gets weird. Okay, here's where it gets really weird. I love all their Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I always wanted to be Captain Jack, but I think Mr. Depp is too good, again, T-O, to be replaced. Because if Johnny Depp wasn't good, this guy is definitely the second in line that they were going to pick. And then he says, as he continues on, as many of you have pointed out, I am highly unqualified. The point of this whole Kickstarter is to not let your dreams be dreams. Don't say tomorrow, just do it. That's all. That's one sentence. There's no comma there, nothing. So I don't know, man. This kind of made my week. It's my favorite news story of the week.
I know. I after seeing that, I just went back and watched some of those Shia LaBeouf Don't Let Your Dreams Be Dreams green screen things again because it's just so hilarious.
Indeed.
See, that's why I think it's fake, just because of that end sentence right there.
Yeah. Well, hey, fake or not fake, I'm glad this guy did it because it made my week, man. It's awesome. So back to the VR train here. Oculus Rift pre-orders came up out of nowhere this past week. Just kind of surfaced up, and I saw on Twitter, Oculus Rift pre-orders are happening, and they sold out of day one stock in 14 minutes. So a lot of Oculus Rift pre-orders already happened. People who pre-ordered are going to start getting their shipments in March, and the original Kickstarter backers are actually going to get one of these new retail versions for free in March. The kicker here is that the Oculus Rift, once rumored, actually not even once rumored, once kind of said by Palmer Luckey, who invented the damn thing, to be about $350, ended up being $600.
Sounds like a PS3.
That's PS3 price right there. People are gonna have to get a second job.
That's almost like the Xbox One before they decided to cut it down.
Oh man, I think this spells, aside from the fact that you got to have a PC powerful enough to run the thing, I think the $600 price tag clearly puts this into niche market, very early adopter range, and not something that's going to see mass adoption real fast. The tech specs on it are not super unrealistic. I mean, I checked, and my PC would run Oculus Rift just fine. And I don't have like the latest and greatest. I've got a pretty powerful machine, but it's interesting. But what do you guys think this means for PlayStation VR and for the other, for Vive and some of these other VR systems coming out?
Well, I mean, just the fact that it sold out that fast, I think that's a good sign because then it shows that the demand is there. In terms of the price, I have a couple of different thoughts on that. One. On the one hand, I'm thinking $600 price tag is not going to last. I mean, even when the original iPhone came out, after a while they dropped the price after all the early adopters picked it up at the higher price. But if they do keep that price with the PlayStation VR, I can't imagine Sony would charge more than that for it. Certainly, they would probably charge a bit less than that. I would think, like by $100 or $200.
I think if Sony charges more than $349, they're dooming the thing from the start. If it can't cost more than your console.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think this shows that there's a lot of interest in VR. So if Sony can come in price competitively, already with the huge install base that they have with the PlayStation 4, that it's going to need to function, obviously. I think they're well positioned. Especially, they announced this week they've got 100 titles in the works for PlayStation VR. I have yet to see anything that makes me think that any of those are actually going to be good, based on their demos, but. I think Sony's well positioned. I think that we're going to see less and less of things like Samsung Gear VR and Google Cardboard. Those sort of, they're more like apparatuses that you drop your phone into.
I don't think this will have too much of an effect on that. I would imagine that things such as Google Cardboard, the market for that is completely different. People will be using it for something completely different. It's not for like, big games or anything like that, but maybe, like the casual person that wants to, say, use Street View but feel like they're actually there, for example.
Yeah, I see them more as novelty items and less as dedicated entertainment accessories. Right. But I think this puts Vive probably in the most muddy water out of all of the VR systems, because the HTC Vive that they're working on in collaboration with Valve, I think everyone who has used it has, for gaming specifically, has talked about it as being maybe a little bit better than the Oculus Rift. Also, just because the controllers people seem to like better, but there's so much more tech in the Vive that the price may kill it right out the door. It's probably going to cost maybe even double what Oculus Rift is costing, because you've got to think you've got controllers with it. It's got more tech in the headset, and then you've got those light boxes that you set in the corners of your room that kind of so that it knows where you are in terms of walking around the environment, and so it has a little more VR functionality than the other systems. But I think
the price point isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the price point is yet, but I think it's got to cost more than the Oculus Rift. It just has to, based on the tech that's in it. I think that, combined with the fact that you basically need basically a VR room to play the Vive, like with nothing else in it, is probably, it makes me skeptical that the Vive is going to be successful. So, what do you guys think about this this report out of Japan from Nomura Securities about the Nintendo NX?
I would say that reports from those, I guess, those analysts that talk about Nintendo and what they're going to do, they're wrong all the time. I mean, they're right a lot of times about how their stock is going to be going down or something's not going to be successful. But other than that, in terms of timing, etc., I don't really believe anything they're ever saying, because they're just speculating. And Nintendo tends to go against the grain in terms of what a company reasonably would be expected to do for their investors. So, yeah, that's my take on the situation.
I agree.
You know what I meant.
I agree and I disagree. I think announcing the console between March and May and then waiting until E3 in June or July, sometime in the summer, to show it off.
I'm thinking more particularly the launch period.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So I do think, I feel pretty strongly that Nintendo will talk about the NX a little more and officially say something about it at E3 this year.
Right.
I feel like anything before that, like in the spring, they're going to want to keep it under wraps and kind of like save the bump for E3. I think that Nintendo has to actually attend E3 if they're going to do that.
Maybe.
I think Nintendo, like, this is, to me, it feels like this is Nintendo's like last big shot to be successful in the console market. I think they need to attend E3, make a big splash, and make this kind of announcement, show that they're still they're still the granddaddy of them all, and really just come in full force and put everything they have behind this console. Because at this point, like, what do they have to lose? The Q3 2017 launch for the NX, that seems a little suspect to me. But I do feel like we're going to know more about it by E3 this year.
Yeah, a little bit. Not too much more, though. I mean,
and I'm still holding true that the next Zelda game is going to pull a Twilight Princess, and it's going to be on both. If the fact that we have not really heard anything about it in forever at this point, like, I just don't see any. Why would they release it on the Wii U at this point? It doesn't make business sense, if you ask me.
Well, you say that doesn't make business sense. Now think about a lot of previous decisions and then rethink your statement. Okay.
Okay, that's true. It doesn't make business sense, but it makes perfect Nintendo sense.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, another Japanese company is doing pretty daggone well with their system, and that's Sony. They had a huge, huge holiday season. The numbers just came in that the PS4 has cumulatively sold through, which means sold through to consumers, more than 35.9 million units globally as of January 3rd, so about a week ago today. And then we finally, Microsoft's been really secretive with their sales numbers. They still haven't made an official statement, but there was a report on Game Rant yesterday that had some information that was kind of sort of leaked in the Windows Weekly podcast that happened at CES, the CES episode of Windows Weekly, where they had ZDNet analyst Mary Jo Foley on the show, she's a Microsoft analyst. She covers Microsoft all the time, day in, day out, and she confirmed a Microsoft source told her Microsoft is sitting at about 18 million Xbox One consoles sold in the same time period. So if that is true, that's right at double the PS4s that have been sold as opposed to Xbox Ones, and obviously if Sony did as well as they did in the holiday season, we all talked about how that was like Microsoft's last big chance with all the price cuts and Halo 5 and Rise of the Tomb Raider. It was really their last big chance to catch up in some way to Sony, to maybe win the month of November or December, and they did not win those months. I think this kind of spells not doom for the Xbox One. It's doing fine financially in comparison to previous consoles, but I don't think Microsoft can catch Sony at this point. They're so far behind.
Right. Quick question. Is that 18 million units sold through to consumers, or is that 18 million just sold, including those that are just sitting at retailers so far?
Well,
that tends to be a bit hush-hush about what they mean about that.
Yeah, well, and there's still hush-hush. This still wasn't official. This is something that a source, an insider who works at Microsoft, told this ZDNet analyst, kind of a leak almost. So it wasn't clear if it sold through or not. Even if it's sold through, it's bad. If it's just sold to retailers, it's even worse. So right. Either way, the situation's not good. All right, so that just about does it for news this week. Why don't we jump into this week's big fun topic and talk about Game of the Year in the bonus round. All right, so this is it. These are the Mappy Awards. Who's going to get a golden Mappy? So what we've done, did you just hurt yourself?
I just slammed my arm against the table.
You should probably avoid doing things that involve
I'm just so excited about the Mappies.
Oh, I thought you were doing some weird fast wrist motions that you should probably avoid while on live broadcast.
I thought he was reaching for a bowl of pasta.
Probably was. He's extra hungry. Got that personal training going on now, and it's like crazy amounts of calories being burned. So what we've done is we actually are going to each of us are going to talk about our top 5 games of the year leading up to our individual favorite game of 2015. So these are games that came out last year and the year that we just ended, and what we each felt was the best. Now, I believe Clark and... Yeah, go ahead, of course.
Questions just to, because what I might say will depend on these rules. Now, when you say games, does that include DLC as a game or not? Because
I'm going to say it includes major DLC that is game sized in the case of something like The Taken King. I'm going to say
I wouldn't consider that DLC so much as they actually finally got out of beta, but
I would say or the old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne maybe would count, although it also came out in the same year anyway. But I would not count cosmetic or like maps or like
so
extra
Cloud
levels.
would not be an entire game into a
right. Like I would say, I know you're asking this question because of Legacy of the Void, so I would say yes, that probably.
Hey, there is no confirmation that is why I am asking.
I would say that probably counts. Yeah.
One other question: does Amiibo count as a game?
Get out of here! You're fired. Now, am I correct in that you guys have combined your list, or are your lists?
No, we have not combined our lists.
It's just coincidence that 4 out of our 5 games overlap.
Well, I'm curious to see if the positioning overlaps and what the one is that does not.
I haven't put positioning except for like my number 1.
Okay, fair enough.
Exactly how I was, and my number 1 is not any of the 4 that overlap. I don't know if that goes the same for Clark, but my number 1 is not one of the overlapping games.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get started here then, and we'll go oldest to youngest. So Clark, give us your number. We'll start at 5, and we'll cycle around. So Clark, give us your number 5.
All right, my number 5 is actually. My number 5, I would probably say, is Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. That's because I only played it multiplayer with people I know. So I didn't have any of the problems you talked about.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Okay. My number 5 is a game that is available on PC. It's available on iOS. It's available on several platforms, and I picked it because it is a game that made me do some things I haven't done since the old days of gaming, and it's a game that was a good consolidated experience, and it was something new that really has not ever been done that I can think of. And so my number 5 game of the year was Her Story.
I completely forgot that existed. Oh.
And the performance by Aviva Seifert in that game is amazing, on par with what you would see in any TV show or movie, True Detective or any of that kind of stuff. The aesthetic of being in that like Windows 95 style interface, while you're playing the game is just so nostalgic. But the real reason that I love this game is that the story was a great mystery, and it made me actually pull out pen and paper and take notes as I'm playing this game and watching videos. And it's just, when's the last time you did that? And I'm drawing lines, connecting clues on my paper, and I'm writing down theories and keyword combinations to try searching in the game's interface, and all this cool stuff. So that game was excellent.
I actually played that, and I didn't use pen and paper because I couldn't find a pen at the time, but I did use Microsoft Word.
Fair enough. All right, Nick, what do you got for us?
Yeah, Nick.
I'm gonna say my number 5.
Nick.
The Taken King. No, I'm joking.
Because that's your number 1.
That's number 0. I can't even classify it. It's in a league all its own. No, I would say Super Mario Maker for the Nintendo Wii U, actually.
Oh my gosh.
It was a really great game. I liked it. You could just bring to life anything, and especially after some of the tweaks they did and the updates where you could put in checkpoints and things. It was just anything you want you could make, basically, especially with all the different I want to say amiibo options, but character options you can get from the amiibo. Luckily, you don't need the amiibos to get those characters. I've seen Mega Man levels, all kinds of crazy levels, and just the creativity of the community for Mario Maker is insane. Right. So the game itself, it's just a basic builder, but if you incorporate the community and all the levels that the community builds, it's just a phenomenal game overall. You can never run out of things to do.
Not only that, but you also get to see how different people and even different developers who have uploaded their Mario Maker creations craft and create different types of levels that you wouldn't have expected in a Mario game, which I think that is really cool. And the reason I jumped in here actually is because Super Mario Maker is my number 4. It's one of our overlapping games.
Nice. I saw actually this week that they added in a new Mario sprite where you can actually be Mario in the little airplane from the Game Boy Mario Land games.
I have not tried that yet, but that would be awesome.
Yeah, that looks pretty fun.
This is really the other reason why this game is on my list. Just Skinny Mario.
Yeah, that's true. Skinny Mario cannot be beaten.
Quick note, the Skinny Mario, I don't know if you guys know it, was actually a glitch during development where when you'd grab a mushroom, Mario would just get elongated, the sprite was stretched. The developers liked it so much, they actually made a Skinny Mario for the game and gave him different, characteristics and attributes. And so Skinny Mario is just a result of a glitch that they liked enough to put in the game.
I know, when I was a kid, I would draw on paper my own levels for Mario, and I would think, I'm going to send this to Nintendo, they're going to make a Mario game, it's going to be in there, this is going to be great. Obviously, that never happened, and so it was kind of really cool because I was able to make those levels that I never had a chance to when I was a kid, and so that's another reason why it's in my top 5. It's just basically, you can make your own Mario game, and now Nintendo really has no excuse to ever make another 2D Mario game, in my opinion. Move on from that.
Yeah, I know when I played Mario Maker, when I played your copy, I did have a lot of fun with it. I am someone who wants to play the game as opposed to spend my time making it, but I appreciate it for what it is, and it definitely deserves to be in the Game of the Year conversation. Super good. I think I never was able to beat the level that I made in order to be able to post it, but...
No, you did beat it. I could not beat it.
Okay. I was going to say, it's definitely beatable. It was just, I remember it being pretty difficult.
It was.
So my number 4 game this year is a game that I played just tons and tons, non-stop amount of hours into, and then once I was done with it, I was done, and I haven't revisited it since like probably early summer. But that game is Heroes of the Storm. Blizzard makes, do they make bad games ever? like what's the worst game Blizzard has ever made? World of Warcraft?
That I can't even think of a bad game. Worst game is a good game for them.
Yeah, and Heroes of the Storm, it did something, I had never played League, never played Dota, yet it pulled me into that MOBA space. It made it approachable, yet still a game that rewards you for mastering it and has a lot of strategy behind it. It really streamlined that genre, I feel like, and it made a big splash in the esports scene this year as well, especially with Heroes of the Dorm and a lot of the other things, and then obviously now with Activision Blizzard, acquiring Major League Gaming, so much that can happen now for Blizzard in this space. But Heroes of the Storm is fun, and it's a free game, so if you haven't tried Heroes of the Storm, God, you definitely should. It doesn't take super crazy PC specs to run it. It's obviously prettier if you do. But I absolutely loved playing that game and just learning the intricacies of a MOBA. And then I kind of started to feel like, well, when they would put out new characters that were for paid, that those characters would be a little stronger and kind of dominate the space. And then as soon as those characters were free characters, they would nerf them, and there'd be the next paid character who was more powerful. I've heard that they've done some balancing and fixed that a little bit over time, and even still, it was always a fun game to play, and the matchmaking was great. So definitely recommend everybody go give Heroes of the Storm a shot.
So my number 4 is a game that I've talked about recently. It actually came out in December, and that would be Xenoblade Chronicles X. It's just the game has its problems. I'll be the first to say, but just the sheer size of the game and the wonder of each continent, just it's mesmerizing sometimes just to kind of walk out on a cliff and just see everything and know you can get to anywhere you can see and then some. It was a great game, and it's a good game when you just look at it. Oh, I've dumped 80 hours into this game, and I still want more, and there is still more. So I mean, I thought it was a fantastic game, and I'm still currently playing. I actually played it a little bit today, but that would be my number 4 there, mainly because of some of its problems and the online multiplayer it has. But overall, the game's fantastic, and I think it's one of the best JRPG style games to come out in a while, in my opinion.
Now, given the fact that it's kind of an open world game, does it suffer from some of those problems that like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Fallout 4 did this year, where you're overwhelmed, and even Witcher 3, overwhelmed with side quests, overwhelmed with little collecty bits all over your world map,
yes.
And kind of getting distracted from that? Because those games, to me, started to feel, like a chore, just like totally drained me and made me not want to play an open world game. So should I avoid Xenoblade Chronicles X for that reason?
If you don't like that kind of thing, then maybe. It's a little different in that the actual story itself in the game is set up as missions, and so which don't seem too terribly different from the optional missions that you can do. And so the game really does give you no direction. You do what you want to do from the very beginning, essentially. And so if you need a bit more direction, then definitely it might be one that you'll have trouble focusing in.
Yeah, and another thing, too, it's kind of hard to compare it with the games you've mentioned, like Fallout and Metal Gear, and things like that, because they take more of a realistic approach, and this game, there's no realism in the game, really. It's very sci-fi fantasy realism. If there was a realism set for that category, this takes it. And so it has a whole different feel. Like, you don't really feel tethered to reality when playing. I don't know how to describe it. Clark, you understand what I'm saying, in a way?
I think the easiest way to explain it is you get to drive and fly around in a giant transforming mech suit.
Fair enough.
Thumbs it up right there.
See, that part of it sells me.
And you get to paint it whatever colors you want.
Even better.
Customization.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it's funny because that is number 2 of our apparently overlapping choices. So, yeah, that's my number 3 game.
I'm noticing a trend here.
Yes.
The question is, where is Triforce Heroes going to fall on Nick's list, or will it? Stay tuned to find out in like 10 minutes from now.
You heard it here first.
So my number 3 game, so far no overlaps with you guys at all. My number 3 game is actually a game that was free on PS Plus, and then I've actually paid for some of the DLC for it. And you guys think I'm going to say Rocket League, don't you?
No, because that has to be higher on the list, or else you're doing something wrong.
Or does it? Or does it? I don't know. No, actually, it's Helldivers.
I knew it.
I absolutely fell in love with Helldivers this year, put tons and tons and tons of hours into it, and then as they would release little DLC packs with new types of gadgets and weapons for your characters in that game, I would get them and just play through it more. They kept adding in even some free DLC with new alien monsters and different things. This game did a lot of things right for me. I mean, it's essentially a twin-stick, top-down shooter, but the fact that they added in lots of different weapon types, lots of different gadgets, all the objectives all over the map that were always so varied, the randomly, procedurally generated planets and levels, just made every match feel fresh, and you always felt so cool if you got your whole squad through the entire mission, completed all the objectives, called down your bird, protected the landing zone, and got everybody in the door. And you know, sometimes you even get like that last guy's diving in the door as you're got a horde of enemies coming at you or a bomb's dropping. It's just action-packed and such a good feeling game from start to finish. The thing that they added in with using the D-pad and doing combinations on the D-pad to call in your items or accomplish objectives, it added this cool little mechanic where you're like learning skills and memorizing different combinations and being really fast with your hands. But it was a cool way, I felt like, to add that in instead of just like, oh, I'm going to call down a weapon now. Like, no, you have to actually work for it to call that weapon down. The fact that you have friendly fire, like your pods, that when you call down gadgets, your pods can fall on your friends and kill them, or
happened to me at least twice.
Yeah, or you're like shooting an alien behind you, and you realize, oh wait, your buddy was right behind you, so you shot him too. Just like there's this frenzy and this chaos to Helldivers that makes it so much fun, and the controls are so smooth. And then I really liked the online component where they brought the community in, and you could go to the community map and see which sectors were being taken over by which one of the 3 alien races, and where you should go take your team to fight to prevent the different enemy factions from making it to Super Earth and taking over Super Earth. Lots of cool things happening in this game. It had a little bit of a rough launch. It was cross-buy on the Vita, and like getting the cross-save to work was a little rough. The online matchmaking for the first couple of weeks was pretty rough and tough to get that working, but once I got all the kinks worked out, man, this was a near perfect game for me in 2015. Clark, you played it a little bit here with me. I don't know how you felt about it, but
one thing I want to mention, you didn't mention yet, is it's one of the few games in modern times that gets multiplayer right. It has a fully functional online multiplayer component, couch co-op that works exactly the same as the online component, and you can mix and match both together. And I thought that was really good, because nowadays you'll have either only couch co-op or local multiplayer, or online, or the way they play are very different.
Yeah,
so
that
definitely was something I thought was very important, and I really liked about the game.
Definitely, yep.
Well, speaking of near perfect games and free PS Plus games, I think we all know what number 3 is going to be for mine. It's a game we all love here, and that's Rocket League.
How dare you?
Well, how dare I what? Put it so high on the list? In terms of away from number 1? No, Rocket League, this is a game we've talked about multiple times in the show. I don't know how many shows this game has been brought up in. But...
Well, we've got 35 episodes, so find out when the release date was and count from there.
But, I mean, I don't really know what else to say about this game. I think we've talked this game to death. It's such a good game. It's quick to pick up and hard to put down. That's like the best thing to say about this game. And I don't know if you guys have anything else to say. I think we've talked it up so much. I don't even know what else to say about it.
No, I totally agree with you. We probably have said so much about it. Folks can go back and listen to just about any episode, and especially the ones where we first got it and started getting hands-on with it. Excellent, super excellent game.
I was expecting not to like it whenever I first heard of it.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think it's only going to gain momentum and get bigger because it's coming out on Xbox One this year, so they have some incentive to, keep creating DLC for it and new modes, and I think it's just going to, I would actually not be surprised to see some esports starting to form in certain leagues around Rocket League, and if so, people are going to want me on their team, so.
Looks like you're going to have to change jobs here in a bit.
Hopefully. So Nick, I think you hit the nail on the head there, other than the fact that it's your number 3, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll be a little higher.
It's right there. It would be my number 2, but my number 2, when you guys hear it, you'll know it has a fond place in my heart and memory. So, I mean, I can't... Nostalgia put number 2 up along with the fan games. You guys hear it in a minute.
All right, fair enough. Speaking of number twos, Clark.
All right, my number 2 is StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void. I don't know why I'm waiting for you to finish typing it out. Yeah, basically, I mean, there's not a lot to say about this that hasn't already been said, but it's basically, like we talked about earlier, Blizzard making a well-crafted game that works really well and that is very, very functional. They did balancing and tweaking to the StarCraft 2 formula, added new units, updated the multiplayer, and added some new multiplayer modes that are very, very fun and interesting. And based on all of that, and the fact that it plays just like classic StarCraft, which has always been one of my top most favorite games, is why this is so high on my list.
Yeah, I'm still pretty sad that this was one that I unfortunately did not get to this year.
Well, it's only January.
Or last year. I mean, I had such good intentions. I started playing Wings of Liberty again because I still hadn't played Heart of the Swarm either.
Right.
And wanted to get through the first campaign from StarCraft 2, and refresh myself on the mechanics and the story. And then I was like, and then I'll just burn through Heart of the Swarm, which I've already bought. It's sitting on my hard drive. And then I'll be ready for Legacy of the Void. And I just
really do need to burn through those. Just the story games.
I know.
Start Fallout 4. You don't get to anything else.
It is. It's true. It's Fallout 4's fault. It's Metal Gear's fault. Which, by the way, notice so far neither one of those are on my list. I don't mean to interrupt. Speaking of Legacy of the Void, you mentioned new multiplayer modes, and one that hasn't really been mentioned is that new co-op mode brought in where you can pick a hero unit or a hero, I guess, group, and the whole mechanics that change, all the different features of it and everything changes there. And so I that's why it's my number 2. I don't mean to jump the gun.
Podcast ready?
Awesome.
Shop with them.
You guys have a synced up overlap there.
Yep.
Yeah, I know I need to get to it. I think probably it would be on this list if I had, maybe. I'm actually not 100% convinced it would be. Honestly, it might be number 6, but because for me, a big portion of StarCraft was always the multiplayer, and that doesn't have that much appeal to me anymore. But the single player alone, I know, is worth it, and I vow in 2016 to play through the rest of StarCraft. Probably by the time they announce, Diablo 4 or something.
Right, but not by the time they actually release that, because that'll probably be 10 years later.
That's typical development cycle.
I'll be ready for retirement by that time.
Yeah, I'll be retiring from Rocket League success at that point. So my number 2 game of the year, you guys was both StarCraft 2: Legacy of the Void. Mine is actually Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Whoa, and you're not even finished with it.
I'm more than halfway through it at this point, so I feel pretty confident in saying it. I think even if, because the story is not really what's doing it for me, and I love storytelling in games. Stories are a big component of why I play games, but the story is not so extravagantly good that it could have a dumb ending and make me derank it in some way, because I'm not playing it for the story. It is all about the gameplay. And the gameplay is perfect. It is so superb. The combat sequences are great. The pacing is great to where it's not all about the combat sequences. A lot of it's about exploration and puzzle solving as well. It's just an epic, amazing game. There's this thing they do where there are some cutscenes in the game, but they do a lot of you're running along, avoiding obstacles and falling rocks and different things like that. In what typically in other games would be a cutscene, but you're still controlling the character and you're trying to make some of these kind of hairpin jumps and things like that all on your own. Where in a lot of games, there's potential for that to get annoying and for you to die and have to try it over and over and over again. But the game slowly teaches you how to play it over time and levels you up, and you unlock new abilities. and the game takes you from kind of entry-level Lara Croft to really badass Lara Croft, and in such a way that you don't die a lot and get frustrated, but it's not because the game is easy, it's because the game does a really great job of putting you in scenarios that are training you for future scenarios without having a weird tutorial or holding your hand. And this game is just so cleanly perfect from a gameplay perspective and mechanically, and it does the thing that Fallout and Metal Gear didn't do this year, which is it gives the feeling of an open world because there are these big hub areas that are really big areas, but you get this verticality in them, so you kind of learn your way around them a little better. You can kind of see different landmarks in the maps that they've built. And then you're doing a lot of your missions in little side areas that are connected to the open world areas, kind of like a hub. So it's much more structured and directed and pulls you along the path. Even side quests, when you there are 5 or 6 side quests in some areas, but you get the side quests from the same character. You carry them out in the area you're already in. You go back to that character to cash them in and kind of do that same thing a couple of times. But they're different enough to where it doesn't get repetitive. Like one of them, I had to hunt down a crow, like a random crow in the level, and there are a lot of birds in these levels that you can hunt with your bows and arrows. So I had to like hunt down this messenger crow. Just like it's really cool, inventive, creative side quests. There are cool things you can do with the different skills. You can eventually like build these poison gas bombs that you hide on dead enemy bodies after you do a stealth kill, and then if you like lure other enemies over to like inspect the dead body, the gas cloud will explode and take out more enemies stealthily. Just all these really cool things, and other thing is that the game has turned me into a graphics whore, which I never have been before, but the graphics are so by and large the best I've ever seen, combined with the fact that the character models and the detail on the characters is so good, that half of playing this game is that I love to look at it. The vistas are good, the areas are well drawn, they're colorful. You know, there was no color in Fallout 4. So I think Rise of the Tomb Raider is the best AAA game that came out this year. It's better than Metal Gear, it's better than Fallout 4. It takes the cake over all those games for me, and that's why it's my number 2.
That's definitely something I was wanting to play, so I'll probably be getting to that this year.
Yeah, and hey, coming to PS4 later this year, and PC probably by the end of January, so lots of opportunities to do that even if you don't have an Xbox One. All right, so we've made it up to our number 2s. It's time for our big Game of the Year announcement. Let's see where the 3 of us fall. Clark?
Okay, ours might very well be the same, but I'm going to say Rocket League.
I am also going to say Rocket League. And there's really not much more to say than that. I mean, we talked about it. Nick brought it up as his number 3.
Kind of took our thunder, from our number 1 spot by mentioning it early. That's probably what the plan.
Not only did I not think I was going to like this game when it was announced for PS Plus and I was booting it up the first time, but also like if you had told me that Metal Gear was coming out this year and Fallout was coming out, all these big AAA games that I knew were coming out this year would not be even in my top 5, in any of our top 5, by the way, I would not have believed you.
I would not have believed myself either.
Yeah, and then beyond that a game involving cars would be in my top 5, much less the best game of the year, and that it would be an indie game. I mean, this was an independent Psyonix Studios. It's an indie developed game, and it was better than pretty much all the AAA stuff that I played this year. So hats off to Rocket League. But Nick, what is your wrong choice for number 1?
Whoa, wrong choice. There are no wrong choices. It was a good year for games. I will be happy to say it is not Triforce Heroes, as you mentioned earlier. Where's that going to fall on my list? It is actually Bloodborne.
Oh, nice.
I was a huge fan of the game. I never played a Dark Souls game, but I loved Bloodborne. I liked the kind of creepy, eerie setting of it, the completely disfigured environment that you're thrown into. It was just The combat was solid. The difficulty was pretty intense. And I like a hard game. None of these games that hold your hand all the way through. Just everything about this game I really enjoyed. And I loved the weapons in the game. They were so unique. Just, I don't know, really. I think I talked about this several episodes ago, and I still think it's great. I actually just purchased the Old Yarnum DLC. I haven't got around to it yet, but I'm sure I'll love every minute of it too, just like I did the main game.
Yeah, I too have yet to dive into the Souls style of game. I too like a difficult game though, and think that it would probably be up my alley. Although I know it's going to be time consuming when I do start it, so that's been sort of one of my reasons for holding off. I have it now in the plastic, like in the backlog, and part of the reason I have it is because you have spoken so highly of it, and the fact that you have it as your favorite game of the year makes me even more excited to eventually jump into Bloodborne. So awesome. Well, I think we can say two things based on these rankings. That the official World Map Podcast Game of the Year, if we had to name one, would be Rocket League, because it's the only overlap that we have. And probably our Developer of the Year would be Blizzard, because that's also an area of overlap here.
Yep.
I would agree.
No arguments there. All right.
I mean,
well,
if you want an argument, I'm qualified to do so.
Indeed. in at least one state, right?
Indeed.
So let's, real quick, before we say farewell, call the doctor. So for the folks who have been awesome enough to stick with us in the podcast so far, you've made it to this final segment where we give you advice about video games or life or really whatever we feel like each week. Sometimes we do this segment, sometimes we don't, but I got some good advice for you this week. And anybody who's looking at the camera right now can see I'm holding up a card for a Halo 5 rec pack. I've got a couple of other. I didn't show the code side. Don't worry.
I wish I can get some of that stuff. How can I?
Well, here's how you can get some of it. I've got some of these codes and things laying around that I'm probably not going to use, and so I want to reward the dedicated listeners of the World Map Podcast. So we're doing a little giveaway. So all you have to do is find us on Twitter at World Mapcast. Make sure you're following us, and tweet at us with the code word, the secret code word, and then what we'll do is we'll DM you back and confirm that you really. So don't say the code word. Don't give it away to everybody in public now. Just let us know you know what it is. We'll privately message you, confirm that you know the code word, enter you into the drawing to win some of these prizes, and then 24 hours after the fully edited audio podcast goes up on iTunes and other podcast services, we'll do the random drawing, and then I'll start reaching back out to people on Twitter who won and give you some of these codes. So, guys, the only thing that's left is to pick the code word, which I have not yet done. I thought I'd let you guys decide what the code word should be.
Well, I didn't know we were allowed to just outright say the code word.
Well, we are right now because people have to know what it is. That's the whole point.
So we're not giving them a. I thought we would give them like a puzzle or a clue or a riddle.
I mean, if you want to, as long as I know what the answer to it is, so that.
All right. Well, Nick, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, just for a code word.
I got one. How about this? This is like easy trivia for most gamers, I think, but and obviously anybody can go Google this, but let's do a little trivia question.
But if they Google it, it shows that they listened.
Exactly, and that's the whole point of this.
Yes.
What is the name of Mega Man's dog? That's the code word. Mega Man's
robot dog, right?
Mega Man's robot dog's name. That's the code word.
Oh man, you should have made it a bit more obscure with Bass's dog's name.
Oh.
Treble and bass. I'll accept that too.
Well, now, okay, here's the question.
The fact that people know what the question is will show that they listen to the show.
Okay.
So they can probably make up a code word and I'll be happy.
If you can't figure out the answer and you ask us the answer to the specific question we asked...
that counts.
That counts.
This is like, yeah.
You'll get a prize, possibly, but it'll also show us that you do not know how to use Google, which is kind of sad.
Maybe they work for Nintendo and they don't understand the internet. Well, thanks everybody for listening. This has been episode 35 of the World Map Podcast. Thanks for listening to our Game of the Year episode. You can email us questions and feedback and all that good stuff to worldmapcast@gmail.com. You can check us out on Google Hangout on air every Sunday. And then the archive video goes up on YouTube. You can search for the World Map Podcast. And, of course, shortly thereafter, the fully edited audio podcast goes up on your podcast listening service of choice. And you can find us if you look on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all that good stuff. And I guess the only thing left to say then is until next time.
We're popping smoke.
We are indeed. Popping it real good. Like a brand new smoke that's never been popped before.